As expected, Roger McCreary is the first Auburn Tiger off the board in the 2022 NFL Draft. Let's talk about where he went, why he went a little bit later than expected, and what it means for his future. But before we do that, I want to welcome you back to the channel, whether you're a member of the Auburn family or a fan of another persuasion. This is the E2C network where the Auburn family speaks. Our content here may tend to be Auburn sports heavy, but if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of our content. And thank you to members of our booster club like John Stokes who help produce videos like this. It seems just like yesterday that I was looking at Roger McCreary being listed as the starting cornerback for the Auburn Tigers, and I was like, who is this guy? Where did he come from? I even started underestimating him from the day one that he got there in the Tigers and was named the starter. So I guess the story just continues for him. People continue to underestimate him, the value that he brings, but I'm happy that he has finally found a home in the NFL in the second round, the 35th overall pick to the Tennessee Titans. There's a lot of advantages for him and the Titans that I think in picking him up there. It makes sense for them, but also Roger as well. We'll talk about those in just a second, but I want to take a second to analyze his trajectory throughout his college career, what led him to this point, and maybe why he ended up a little bit later in the draft than a lot of people expected. As I said, people underestimate him from the very beginning, including myself, but starting about his sophomore season when he officially became a starter, winning the job for the Auburn Tigers, he began to make waves from day one. Not flashy big numbers, but consistency with a little flash from time to time in there as well, and became known as one of the best cornerbacks in college football, even starting to be compared with names that we now know compared to where they went in the NFL Draft. Ahmad Garner from Cincinnati, and also Derek Stingley Jr. from the LSU Tigers. Those are the two big names there. So you can see the company that he finds himself in, with the other two probably getting a little bit more of the attention. Mainly Gardner because of how he did leading up to the NFL Draft, but Derek Stingley Jr. got all the hype in his first season there, and it just never let up. Even with him being injured and basically not playing for an entire season, he still had this hype surrounding him that he's just the best cornerback ever. Look at the numbers, you'll probably see differently, especially compared to Roger McCreary. We've covered that in another video, but I digress. What Roger became known for, what I said, was his consistency, but also the way that he silenced some big duos in college football. Here's a couple for you. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. They did not have big games when they were playing against Roger McCreary. Bryce Young and Jamison Williams, for a more recent example, are also a duo that he silenced. And so there weren't a lot of big interceptions. There weren't a lot of big moments for him because he was basically just silencing them. And there weren't a lot of things to key in on, especially for us as fans that don't analyze these particular things. But what he showed is that he has the consistency to compete with the very best in terms of quarterback and wide receiver matchups, and keep them pretty silent for the most part. So this begs the question of, if he's as good as the numbers say he is, and he showed it out on the field, why did he drop a little bit lower than most people are expecting? Well, we actually have to set up where he was expected to go. As early as his sophomore year, when he started gaining some notoriety after winning the starting job, he was able to get some attention to people saying he could end up in the first round. By his junior year, that was very much the expectation, and especially starting out in 2022. And he had a great, consistent year each time he came out since that sophomore season, with a lot of expectations for him to end up the first round. Not just there, but there was even discussions, we even talked about it here, about him being a mid-level first rounder. Pretty high up expectations right there. So what happened? Well, really it comes down to a couple of things. And there's been a big thing, not just for Roger McCreary here, but for a lot of NFL prospects, measurables. There's been this big discussion this draft about measurables and what people do or don't have in terms of things, parameters that they're looking at. If you want to look any further than that, look at Nakobe Dean, the Georgia linebacker who got overlooked into the third round. That right there tells you something messed up is going on. And as we talked about, he had a lot of substance, but not a lot of flash that some of the other bigger names like that had. And when you couple in some pretty good performances by other cornerbacks that got a little bit more attention as the year went on, it saw him dropping a little bit further. Couple that with a pro day and really a combine for him that wasn't overly impressive, you could see where there's a conversation, does he deserve to actually be in the first round? And so sadly, he kind of saw his stock falling and falling even after the season ended for the Auburn Tigers. I will say this though, how quickly he was taken by the Tennessee Titans with the 35th pick in the second round shows you how highly coveted he was, because they didn't waste any time and didn't want somebody else to snatch him up. But it also does show you that there were other priorities for other teams that didn't want him as their first choice, but definitely wanted him as a second choice. Finally, let's look at the depth chart a little bit for the Titans to kind of piece together what this looks like for him and how he can be of value to the Titans. Well, currently it seems like the Titans are in a little bit of a rebuild after getting rid of a veteran cornerback. It seems like they're ready to go. All of their main guys right now are going to be in their second and third season coming into the 2022 season, which shows you that they're ready to start fresh with this young talent. And Roger looks to be firmly planted within that depth chart, because even ESPN right now has him listed as the second string behind one of their starters. So that shows you the expectation that ESPN has for him already. Currently, the starters for the Titans at cornerback are going to be Elijah Fulton and Caleb Farley. There's also Elijah Molden, who is considered a backup right now, but since he's been there, you can probably consider him in the mix for starting and just time in general at that position. Right now, ESPN has Roger firmly behind Caleb Farley, who is coming back from an ACL injury, so there's no telling how he'll be in terms of health-wise. While the expectation is for him to be back, you don't know how that's going to alter his performance or not when he's recovered from that type of injury. So with him being behind that guy, looks like that is going to be a little bit of an insurance, and that's what the Titans viewed Roger McCreary as, his insurance behind this guy who will be recovering, which could give Roger a lot of opportunities to see a lot of playing time at that position or at the other boundary position. Here's what I expect. I expect Roger to be in the rotation very early and quite frequently. I think you can look and see the Titans are open to which one of these young guys show that they're the best option for them. And even if they're not a starter, they're going to be heavily in a rotation trying to make sure that they have the best future for this position as possible. But as always, when you see these new draftees, you're going to probably see them, if they're not an immediate starter, as part of special teams, earning respect and earning playing time. So I expect if you're an Auburn Tiger fan, you should be watching the Tennessee Titans this season, because you're going to see Roger McCreary a lot. So in conclusion, for Roger McCreary being drafted in the second round, 35th overall pick by the Titans, obviously highly regarded, and maybe should have gotten a little bit higher, but certain things from himself and others got in the way of him being able to have that accomplishment to his name. He's been underestimated his entire career, starting in college and probably in his high school. I wasn't following him then as well. But those that underestimate him are always proven wrong, because he has showed the consistency to be an elite level cornerback, and I think that will continue in the NFL. I think it's a good relationship for the Titans and Roger McCreary to have, and this will be a long one for both of them. If you enjoyed this type of content, please do smash that like button. If you want more from us, be sure to subscribe along with hitting the notification bell so you don't miss any uploads or live streams. There's also ways to help support our content listed in the description, such as hitting the join button here for $1 a month to be a channel member, or you can head over to patreon.com/E2C Network to join our booster club, where you can get different perks at different levels to help support our content as well. Thank you for tuning in to the E2C Network, where the Auburn family speaks. War Eagle.